right, so just a heads up so everyone knows. I did have a question for them, for Evan specifically, but I'm going to skip that question. I'm going to do a quick intro. We're going to go through one by one, just say who you are and what you are to the community. I'm going to ask a few questions on the list, and then we're going to go straight to the audience, because we know you will have tons of things to ask. I'm going to get those questions down. Once the questions are down, I'll let you be free. And you can leave this incredibly hot room and be free forever.
Sounds good.
All right.
I'll manage.
Is it recording? I'm hoping so. Oh, somebody got my voice saying that. I hate this. All right.
Got caught tripping.
Hello, everyone. For those of you who are here, I believe you know what the subject matter is about. Blood On The Clocktower has been a sensation for the last 10 years. 10 years? 5 years. I'm not 5 years.
10.
10.
20,
Yeah.
50.
5 years.
Can you figure out which is the truth?
Absolutely changing the social deduction space from what it used to be to what it is now. We have gone from playing Werewolf and Resistance to nothing but tables of Blood On The Clocktower in almost every single gaming convention. But the biggest problem that comes with them is building a community of that. Having people come from all walks of life coming together to form your group that you play Blood On The Clocktower is. How do you keep that community going? How do you start that community? And more importantly, how do you stop that community from breaking down? I have 4 people from the also the Pandemonium Institute who are happy to answer your questions, answer my questions, and hopefully give us all an idea of what it is to build a community and keep it running. Who are now going to introduce themselves.
Oh, heck, I'm first in line.
I'm
oh,
so
no.
sorry.
Pressure.
Hi, I'm Claire, for those who don't know me. I've recently joined Pandemonium Institute, so I kind of look after the fulfillment and the inbox. Hey, Evan's just about to join us.
Perfect timing. Everything is right here.
Sorry, I was running Blood On The Clocktower.
I'm also based in Manchester, so I've built a bit of a Manchester community in person, and I've also kind of been quite involved with the LGBT server a year or so ago when we were sort of really building that up in an online gaming space. So yeah, a bit to add to the conversation.
Hello, I'm Lachlan. I run the Dundee Clocktower group, and I also do art and graphics for Clocktower nowadays, not the old stuff. And yeah, that's about it.
Hiya, my name is Jams. I come from the Bay Area of California right now, though shortly to be in Sydney, Australia. I run the Clocktower community there. I also do quite a lot of different things for the Pandemonium Institute, including running playtest games, running all of our social media, and a lot of other stuff.
Hi, my name is Evan Donahue. I'm from the Blue Mountains in Australia. I live in Sydney now. I started the Pandemonium Institute with Stephen Medway, the designer of Blood On The Clocktower. As far as running groups go, we've basically been running with our friends and with the Sydney community from 10 years ago. But more consistently now, I run a group in Newcastle, New South Wales. It's about 2 hours north of Sydney by car. And I've been running games. I used to live there, so I've been running games there for 2 or 3 years now and continue to go up there and visit and run the games there. Yeah.
So just a heads up, this is not a round robin kind of thing. So if you want to jump in when someone asks a question, feel absolutely free. But I'm going to start this frame one directly straight to you, Evan.
Okay.
Tell us about building 2 separate communities in the very early days of Blood On The Clocktower.
Well, it's a thing. It's a thing now where it's like, well, you want to play this game, you build a community. We were in the lucky position that we just happened to be the group that Stephen started playing with. So as far as building communities go, I just really like board games. I like throwing parties. I like spending time with my friends. So twice a year at the house I used to live in Sydney, we would open it up for 3 whole days, just put it up on Facebook as a free-to-all public event. We'd clear out most of the bedrooms, put up as many tables as we could, call it the Salisbury Festival of Board Games. 3-day board games house party, basically. It was fantastic, and they're still doing it. I've moved out of that house, but we're still back there once or twice a year just doing that exact same thing. So yeah, to these games, Stephen turned up. We hadn't met him before, but he liked games as well. He'd been designing a lot of games. He turned up with a very early version of what would become Blood On The Clocktower. He'd played Werewolf for the first time a few months before, and had a great time, but also thought, I reckon I can fix this. So it was at our Board Games Festival that he decided to try it out for the first time. And as far as community building goes, it was just kind of less formal than it might happen now, where it's like, I have a Blood On The Clocktower group, I'm running a monthly event. It was more just kind of being a social captain to the point where If you want to play this game, you find a space to do it, and you gather your friends together as often as you can, and you just go. So that was kind of the early one, which is just get your friends together, have a good time. For the Newcastle one, that was I started that one because going from having fun with your friends playing games to having to run a company, and if you have a successful game, then you also have to have a successful company and learn how to do that, and that's difficult. It's tough riding a desk when all you want to be doing is playing games and stuff. So I made sure to keep Blood on the Clocktower in my life as a fun thing, and not just the thing I had to send emails about and submit taxes for. So I started a group just in my city, found a local venue that could host us, put it up on Eventbrite, on Facebook, put the word out to the existing Clocktower groups that I was doing this. And over time, people would just turn up. It helps that the game had more notoriety now. But over time, we've built up a really cool core group of about a dozen or so people who will turn up twice a month every time. And just making sure that it's consistent, same time each month. And that you're taking care of your players and your community and having fun together. And that is a bit of a long answer on both things, but yeah, the first one was just organic. The second one is you've got to put the organizational effort in, but it's the same outcome, good times.
Thank you very much. My next question is up to you, Lachlan. You've been building communities in the local area, and by local, I mean Scotland, because I'm from England, I know how this works. Tell us more about starting that up and building a community around here so many years after the first one went through.
We started doing ours because we couldn't get enough mates around the house to actually play the game consistently. We bought this game and thought, damn, it's like 10 players. I should actually try and play it regularly for the cost of the game. So we started playing in a local pub because I knew a guy at my work that could give us the venue for free, and we could run the game for free, which was handy. And it just kind of grew from there. It's now got to the point where it really needs a better organisational system than I've implemented through Facebook, because it's more like I'll just put a post up and be like, who wants to play? And it's always booked out. It's such a rush, which is great. It's good to see, because Dundee's not a big place, especially compared to Glasgow or something, but there's always enough to fill probably 2 town squares every time. And we only run the basic stuff, really, apart from a couple of crazy customs that people want to bring along. But yeah, it's been growing pretty well in Scotland from what I understand. Got the top boys, the Glasgow lot here, running all these games. I think you're probably the bigger community. But then I know there's Stirling, Dundee, there's a group in Edinburgh, loads of local cafes, and it's always growing. I mean, you guys must struggle the same way we do, where you couldn't run one town square.
No.
You'd never be able to keep everyone happy. No, and they get so disappointed when... It's tricky for us because I like to do all the silly things you see down at the stall. We do that in our local game, but it's such a job to get it done that we're actually, I think Annabelle, one of our other storytellers, is going to start a second game in a second cafe within our group. And it'll probably go from there. In a couple of years, it'll probably be loads. I won't be able to keep track of it. But there you go. That's Clocktower Dundee.
Good problem to have.
Just heads up, anyone you could just jump in when you want. I feel patient. I know I've aimed 2 questions at 2 people, so I'm going to be a bit more looser about this. I think I'm going to start with the question that I feel is far more important about building a community of any kind. What do you do when the community isn't going up? When line isn't always going up, how do you keep and maintain Blood On The Clocktower? What are the few tips you can give people like us who don't have Dundee levels of enthusiasm?
We've never had that problem personally. we do some things with our group specifically that I think people really appreciate. We've got a silly system of playing cards you get when you're that character. And for some reason, I don't know why, but if I don't give them their card at the end of the game, they're like, where's my card? I was this character, give me my damn card. And it's silly recurring elements that you can bring to the table every time that makes people look forward to next month's game. And we do a little newsletter, we've got them on the stall, where it's got articles about last month. And we don't necessarily sell them, we just post them up. And we do the decor, and it brings people back in. And they like the event that it becomes, as much as the game as well, which they all love, of course. So I think that putting the effort in on that level and not just phoning it in, I think helps cement it, personally.
I would also say that the player count of the game, it's such a wide player count that it can be played at. It does a lot of heavy lifting. And if you're planning, ideal maybe sort of 9 to 12 players, but it can go up as high as 20 if you're including travellers. It can go down as low as 5 plus your storyteller, so 6 of you, if you're running teensies. So actually, if you're planning for a 12-player game and suddenly you have 4 people that don't turn up, there's a lot of heavy lifting done by the fact that the game is so scalable to different player counts, and actually you can just kind of wing it or you're expecting to run 2 groups, but actually you don't quite have enough. You can combine them into one, or you've got a few too many. You can split them into 2. As long as you've got the space to do that and the extra grim, and you plan for more games, you can always condense it back down. The game itself is so addictive and replayable that actually we haven't found in the community that I've built that we've had a permanent kind of drop-off in interest. But week to week or month to month, you might have a bit of a dip if it's a nice day or if people are on holiday or it's whatever. But you can kind of plan around that pretty easily.
Yes, it never gets old. You can play TV every week.
Yeah.
And because of all the different factors that can be in play, it'll always feel fresh. And everyone's way of playing is different. As you know, Jock in our group has absolutely no plan for anything at any time. And we'll just do stupid things. But it's funny, it's part of the humour, it's part of the banter in our games. And you appreciate that, just the fact that it's always different, and whatever character he's playing, he won't react in the same way that someone else playing the exact same character with the exact same information.
I suppose to get to the question of what to do if your group isn't growing, and a lot of our answers have been like, oh, well, I've never heard of that.
Yeah, sorry.
No, to be fair, what Claire was saying, I've had those nights where, you get the 5 people turn up, and it's like, well, we can run TT for a while, and then you're like, well, did anyone bring any other games? And sometimes it just doesn't find the thing. But I think if that's happening really consistently, you maybe got to be looking at other factors. Maybe it could just be the area you're in doesn't have people interested that way. Maybe you're not getting people to the right avenues. Or there could be some element of the thing itself that if people don't come back. So that might be unpleasant things about that. Is there a way that regular players might be treating people or making the game unfun, something like that? You've got to look at that. Transport. Is the place easy to get to? We might get to talking about venues later. That is just a huge one that we look at. Any advice we give is like just make it accessible, like in as many different ways as you can. And if it's not, and that's logistically accessible, but is it a kind of like emotionally accessible? Yeah. If it's not growing consistently. And we can see it pretty confidently. It's a pretty good game, and it usually kind of just builds its own community. So if that's not happening, maybe examine what some of the other factors might be and what you can do about that. Yeah.
On that note, I think it really helps as well to look at, in that situation, who is and isn't showing up. So for example, in my local group, we had a bit of a situation where there were a couple of male players who would rock up and then kind of just be very loud, which isn't inherently a bad thing, but what happened was if Thank you for the example.
Damn men.
But genuinely, and it was a really interesting thing because I started that group, and so when I was running, it was very much like I'm very conscious of like setting a standard to say like everyone gets to speak, everyone gets a voice, like really just doing both like active and passive redirections to make sure that especially our like female and like non-binary players had the space to like speak out and be heard, especially in a game where literally it is a talking game. The whole point of the game is you can say whatever you want at any time. And so one of the things that came up that I didn't actually realize was like I had gone to Australia and the UK for a while for work, and when I got back, we ran a games night. It was great, and afterwards a bunch of like the women stayed after, and I didn't think much of it at the time because I was like, oh yeah, these are just my friends, and we haven't seen each other for a while. We're hanging out, and then it came up as we were talking after the games, and they're like, yeah, actually, when you were gone, it felt different because the people who were running the games, they weren't as conscious of just clearing space for people to talk and making sure that particularly like some of the quieter people, which isn't necessarily just like women in the room, it could also just be more introverted people, but making sure that they had the space to kind of feel like they could talk or feel like when they made a play that might be more interesting or unconventional, that they weren't being called out for like, oh well, that wasn't an optimal play and you played badly, and so just being kind of extra mindful of the language that people are using and the way that people are existing in the game space. I think it goes a really, really long way for just making people feel like they can come back and that they're going to have a good time and not just like have fun, but feel respected as players and as people when they show up to play.
On that subject, I'm going slightly more. I'm getting a bit wild tonight. Are there safety tools or codes of conduct created in such large communities that people can use to help keep the game on a sort of like a sensible level, such as noise limits or talking over people, or including certain fables or certain people who may not be as accessible to the game will be able to play?
Yeah, I'll hop in on this one just because so in February of 2023, Stephen and I went to India to run games there, which was really, really cool. It was the first time I'd run games in Asia at all. And when I was there, I was running my first game, and I basically said, the day has begun, and everyone started talking at the same time, and I was like, oh my god. And I was like, oh, but they seem fine with this, so I'm just gonna kind of let it happen and see how it goes. And then essentially there were some games that I ran, and this is a more extreme example, but essentially I was like running the game, and they'd just all be talking, and then they would just all turn and look at me, and one of them would sort of point, and I'd be like, oh yeah, like this person nominated this person. Like that was just how it went. It was just a lot of talking at once. And in both like US and UK and Australia groups where I have run, it depends culturally based on like where I am, but especially, in the US, I've run games where if somebody talks over another person, immediately there's like 3 people who turn and look at me as if, to say like, hey,
help.
Yeah, help. Like this person just got talked over. Like surely it is your job as the storyteller to do something about this. Whereas in India, like culturally, I learned later, it's actually a sign of respect. At least in the games that I was running, they were saying, it's a sign of respect that if you're talking at the same time as somebody, it means that you're engaged in the conversation. It means that you're jumping in. And that was like culturally how that functioned. And I had no clue that that was the case until I was in that situation, just learning kind of on the go when I was there. And so from a just like storytelling perspective, I think it actually matters a great deal to really understand kind of what your players' expectations are for you as the storyteller, because it is going to vary depending on where you are. And the more that you can be on the level of like what your players expect from you and what they want. And then if you realize that those expectations aren't being met, actually stepping back and having that meta conversation with your group and saying, like, what is it, like, where is that line? Like, is it that if somebody, like, can people ever talk over other people? Like, because if you are having a lot of over talking and people seem dissatisfied with it, that, like, it could just be a cultural thing. It could be that people are really being disrespectful. There's a lot of different answers for that, and I think it matters a great deal to just be aware of kind of what people's expectations are in those situations.
It was so hard not to talk over you during that whole section.
I'm so proud.
It would have been a mark of respect.
Thank you.
Yeah, no.
I feel respected.
I like the idea that you're in India waiting for your turn to talk, and they're like, she's disrespecting you right now.
It was genuine. I've just never heard so many people all talking at once, and I was like, because I was really had to genuinely like restrain my own internal urge to jump in and to be like, this person is waiting their turn to talk, or like to be just. It just was a completely different experience.
So for the question for codes of conduct, I think what you're touching on is and the phrase we've heard and adopted and use a lot is meet your players where they're at. For the communities that we directly run, as they do grow in size, we found it useful sometimes. For example, a Clocktower convention. It's like, here are the codes of conduct for the convention so that we can, on a broad level, kind of police, I guess. I was trying to think of a better verb, but police that space. But as creating a game or producing a game, we don't want to impose codes of conduct, our values necessarily, except like in a concrete way. There are the soft tools, as you say, the fabled characters. The game acknowledges in a lot of ways, this is a social game. To be the storyteller or run a community, you're going to be the social captain. If you're the storyteller, you are the social captain. People will see you as that, whether you want it or not, so you kind of become that. And the fabled characters are there to help that out. And just a lot of meeting your players where they're at, being kind and stuff. And just to follow on from the Indian example with an Australian one, in 2017, we were, Stephen and I went to Canberra. I think we went with Lachlan as well. Not this Lachlan, Australian.
Other Lachlan.
Other Lachlan. On this trip. This is a group that regularly played Werewolf, but they'd heard about Clocktower and invited us down to run it. Game 1 starts. Some of the typical friendly Australians, board game types. Game starts, day 1. Someone points at this woman across the circle and says, I think Clara's a effing liar. Like just invective swear words. And she stands up and points in his face and screams, you're an effing C. And like within 5 seconds, I'm like, firstly, this is almost objectively hilarious, but I'm stepping in going like, whoa, guys, can I just get everyone to take a chill pill for a second? And instantly they're in friendly mode. They're like, what's the problem? I'm like, is this okay? And they're like, oh no, this is just how we play. And I'm looking at the whole group for confirmation, and they're all just like, yeah, no, we're really good friends. We love each other. This is how we enjoy playing with each other. I'm like, okay, but if anyone's not, like, come talk to me out back if you don't want to, like, no public pressure or anything, but if this is really how you want to do it, go for it. And they're like, great. And then just back to some of the most vicious slander I've ever heard. But that's what they wanted. So if we come in with a code of conduct, like, you must treat everyone with language and respect, that's not going to fly everywhere. Some people, there might be a group that likes to make lewd jokes, and that's, like, not going to be everyone's cup of tea. And if you're going to be that group, you certainly got to be aware to not make people uncomfortable with anything like that, and be aware of that. And we've been in groups where someone like, you get a message the next day and someone's like, talk got a little too far last night, just letting you know. We're like, thanks for checking in with that. Everyone's been really cool about that. But some groups just do fly that way, like India or Australia.
You couldn't ban swear words and shouting in Scotland.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
That's part of the patter. You're going to execute someone, get me.
Speaking of language, in that case, what is it that people could do for those of you who want to like incorporate a more younger audience? Let's say you're building a community that's coming out from a school or from a much younger people than you'd expect, who can't have the banality to just swear whenever they want, and also you have to or mixed groups between that. What kind of things could be put in for a younger Blood On The Clocktower community?
I'll speak to this one. I have kids of my own. Play with my 8-year-old a couple of times. So, there are the mechanical side of things. We can use something like the Revolutionary to pair up a child with, or a young child with an adult to help give them that security to kind of start bluffing and start getting into games. But if you're building a younger-based community, which I think is really what the question was sort of more around, youth groups and schools and so on, I think that less so of the revolution. I think more the storyteller really would just need to take on that social captain role. And while we always run games and say, you can ask me any questions, it's not a suspicious thing to do, take me to one side, be approachable, but extend that to actually, if you're feeling uncomfortable in any of this, let me know. If you are feeling like people are pushing on you unnecessarily or gaslighting you or any of that kind of, because it is ultimately a bluffing game. People are lying. We're encouraging people to lie. And there is that fine line between then overstepping into the slightly more unsavoury side of it, the tunnelling and the sort of gaslighty type. And we want to steer away from that. And I think if you sort of see yourself a little bit with younger audiences as sort of a bit of a shepherd in terms of really just have fun yourself and make sure that everybody's sort of bring them along with you, I think that's probably the way to approach it.
We've had that on the stall.
Yeah.
Like some young kids taking part just this weekend.
I made a 4-year-old the drunk today.
Yeah.
That was a choice.
That's illegal.
Oh, yeah, I made a kid the drunk as well.
She had a great time. Yeah.
We actually had a really young girl play with her dad, and they played the same character, and he was like a guide for her. And
Oh yeah, in my game it was a 4-year-old playing with presumably a father. And
we hope so. Yeah.
it seemed like it. I don't know. I didn't ask. But yeah, they were playing. They were not revolutionary. They were playing like same character.
That's why we ran it earlier. It was just the same character.
Yeah. And that's. I think it again goes back to how do you include young people and children as there's going to be spaces where there are adults caretaking for young children, like in schools and community groups and youth groups and stuff. And then that is just that similar thing of you're a community leader, you're in charge of children and all that. But I think when for everything else, it is almost the cop-out answer of values. I don't have kids myself, but that I know of.
Be surprised waiting for you when you get back home.
But kind of negotiation around events for adults only and that are kid-friendly, and kind of as parents and being friends to people with parents, kind of recognizing that they have lives as well, and including those kids where you can, and knowing when it's a kid day and a not kid day. And then once you're there, doing everything that Clara said about just kind of being awesome for them, yeah.
I have to double check if you're going to say something.
No. I've got stories.
I mean, do you want to?
I mean, every time I play with my 8-year-old, he draws the Scarlet Woman every single time, or we're rev paired, and it's right. Okay, I'm the demon again. I'm going to star pass. I'm going to claim to be the Raven Keeper and back up whatever he's saying. We've got our standard play, but I have played games with him where he has been good and he's been nominated and felt a little bit pushed on, and it was very much his own sensibilities, really. Like there was nothing untoward that the other player was doing. It was just part of the game, and I think perhaps my kid didn't have the emotional maturity in the moment to be able to go, he was starting crying and all of this. Like, okay, no, right, you're not quite ready to do this on your own yet. But it's very much a player by player person. I've played with kids at Strange Games last weekend or a couple of weekends ago that were sort of 10 and 11, and they were absolutely bossing it. They'd stepped into the social deduction genre beautifully. So it's very, very individual. They'll learn at their own pace. Sorry, go ahead.
No, it's fine. Because I have to grab the microphone, I'm always like, I don't want to take it before you finish. I'm like, is it okay? Can I grab the thing? Okay, thank you. All right, so going into more of a darker tone of the game, what do you do when someone definitely needs to leave? When you've built a community, especially when that continuity is about interacting, yelling, social deductioning, and you have that one person that needs to go. How do you make that happen as smoothly as you can, and also hopefully not disintegrate your community at the same time?
I think a huge part of this is actually proactively creating a space where the people in your community feel like they can come to you as soon as they recognize that there is a problem in the first place. Because if you've already gotten to the point where somebody is consistently such a big problem that you're like, oh, now I need to start thinking about this, then that means you've already, in a sense, kind of not done a good enough job creating a space where your players could raise those issues to you as they first started happening. And so I think, it's like kind of built into the rules of the game in itself. Like when we read the new player explanation, we say things like, you can say whatever you want at any time, and the storyteller is there to be a support for you. Like you should and can ask them all of your questions, and that includes the social, like parasocial relationships part of the game. Like even though we're talking about it in the context of the game, but it does come outside of that as well. Like if you are, as a storyteller, somebody who is open and accessible, and you position yourself as somebody who can be there to answer questions. And I think I often find it quite helpful as well to not be the only person, because that way if somebody ever has a problem with you as the one who's managing the group, they have like a second person that they can go to if they don't feel comfortable coming to you. But I think, just doing all of the things that you would do as a friend to be somebody who is approachable and can be reached out to if there is a problem, I think is the kind of where you start with that, so that when, if you have somebody who does turn up to your games and there's, maybe they're making comments that make other players uncomfortable. Maybe they have certain biases that kind of come through in a way that certain players of certain identities feel targeted and like unfairly. And I mean, as much as I'd like these to not be real examples, like of course they are. And I think the best thing you can do genuinely is just to be in a position where when you are given that feedback as the person managing the group, or when you see those things start to happen, just checking in and talking and having those conversations, being like as open and forthcoming with your communication, both with the people who are being harmed by this behavior, and then kind of afterwards to the person who is causing this behavior. Like for me, like addressing the harm that has been caused is by far the most important thing, because if there's somebody there who's like causing a problem and you sort of talk to that person but you don't ever follow up with the person who was on the receiving end of their behaviors, then like that also, it matters so much to make sure that they still feel like they can come back. Because if you kick someone out of the group for doing harmful behaviors but then you don't ever go to the person who was kind of receiving that and like make sure that they're okay and that they have the things that they need, then you're still like failing that person in a way. And so I think it's not easy to do, but it just comes down to being willing to have those hard conversations and put yourself in that position. Like if you're going to be the one sort of managing that community, that is part of the job, even though it's hard.
Yeah, I mean, these are not nice conversations to have, but I would just echo, like, don't let it build up into such a big problem. Don't shy away from those conversations. Have them as they arise, because it's much easier after a game, or even like the next day when everything's simmered down if it needs to, but fairly timely. Pull that person aside, whether that's online or whether that's in person, or reach out however you need to, and address the behaviour. Don't ever attack the person, but say, like, this behaviour was not well received. It may have been well intentioned. You may have lost sight of, whatever it may be. But actually, this behaviour was a problem. Please, can you not repeat it? Once you've had that conversation, if they continue that behaviour, it's much easier then to say, I'm very sorry, you need to leave the group, or please, can you not come back for a couple of months just till this all blows over, or whatever it might be, whatever the remedy might be. But you need to have those initial conversations quickly enough that you can then refer back to them and say, look, you haven't addressed this particular problem.
Yeah, as you say, ideally the first conversation you have isn't the one where you're kicking them out and you leave and never come back. It comes out of nowhere. Because it's fair to them, and you want to give people an opportunity to change if they genuinely are just an unpleasant, problematic person. But also it demonstrates to other people in the group that you're approaching this fairly, and that if they were ever in the same situation, they'd get a fair shake as well. I think, like, just outright kicking people out, saying, hey, please don't come back, is an absolutely nuclear option. In any of the groups I've run, I've seen it one time. And that was actually something specific to the way they were playing the game, which is actually, like, people socialize during Clocktower, probably more so than many other types of games, so a lot of the problems are going to be social problems. But broadly, if someone's acting so egregiously that they're going to get kicked out of a Clocktower game, then they would probably be, that conversation would come up with almost any kind of activity. For this one example, it was someone who could not handle being nominated or being accused at all. It was always, you are targeting me, you're coming after me. Always the biggest uproar, the worst, to the point where many of the organizers were coming to myself and Stephen saying, like, people are not coming back because of this guy. Like, outside of the game, affable enough fellow, wasn't doing any of when you think of, like, problematic behavior, you think of all the really ways humans can just be terrible to each other. It wasn't really any of that. It was just impossible to actually play a game. Just sore loser, constantly blaming everyone else, and Stephen just handled this one directly and went through all the steps that Claire just outlined and Jan just outlined, just having those initial conversations, saying, here's how your behavior is affecting people, maybe try this other thing. Probably 3 or 4 of those before it was just like, it's still an issue and you haven't changed, and we are so sorry, but we've given you an opportunity, and it doesn't look like this is a thing. We cannot play with you anymore. And that is the only time I can think of that someone has just been outright kicked. It's difficult, it's a nuclear option, but at a certain point, you've just got to do it.
Yeah, I was going to say that one of the most common things that I've seen actually boils down not so much to, like, our social behavior, but more to just player play styles. And I'm going to nerd out for a second and talk about this, because this is my bread and butter. That when one of the great things about Clocktower, right, is that you can come into it and there's not one right way to play the game. There's so many things that people can do when they're playing the game, and more importantly, there's so many different priorities that people can bring with them when they play the game. I know Magic the Gathering has done similar work where they basically said, here are sort of the 3 archetypes that players might have when they're playing. For Clocktower, I've broken it down into 4, and so you have, like, your optimizers, which are the people that go in and they're like, I am going to do everything in the most optimal way. If I have a play that I can do that is the most optimal thing, I will always do that thing. And I think to some extent, sometimes with those players, you see that kind of carrying over to other players, where if somebody says, oh, I'm this character, then the optimizer player is sitting there going, well, if you were that character, then you would do this thing because that is the optimal thing for you to do as that character.
Why didn't you do that?
Yeah, exactly. Then you have the what I like to call the main character, which is the person who just sees the most crazy, chaotic possible thing that they could do with all of the stuff in the game. They're like, that, I want to do that. Like Patters, when I was talking to Patters about this, he was like, that one's me.
We've met a few of them.
And then you have your puzzlers, which are the people who are like, I don't actually care so much if I like win the game, but what I do care about is solving the puzzle. Like, there is a logic puzzle here, and I am going to solve it. I want all the pieces. I want to put it together. I would be perfectly happy sitting here with my like logic puzzle clock tower book. Like that's the puzzle people.
It's getting big on the subreddit.
And then it's fun. It's really fun. And then you have the people I like just to call the friend, which is just like you're just there for the vibes. Like, you're there because you like to be in a space with your friends, and you're happy if everyone else is happy. And to be clear, most people like may have one or more of these things that they prioritize more than others. They're not mutually exclusive. You can absolutely identify with more than one of these things. They combine in really fun and interesting ways. But where a lot of friction I found comes from is when people forget to consider that not everyone shares their same priorities or has the same order of priorities when they're playing the game. And so the most common conflict I've seen is when people enter the game assuming that every single other player in that space has the exact same priorities as they do, and then basically impose those priorities onto other people and respond negatively when they are like, this person is not playing by my priorities. And so that, I think, it makes a really, really big difference, especially as the person like managing the community or as the storyteller, to recognize, okay, I want to take a step back for us to all just like have the capacity to self-reflect and be able to realize what like your priorities are as a player, and then have the conversation with other people. I run the Twitch stream for Gen Con, which is a big US convention, and one of the first things I did when I put that group of people together was I said, let's talk about this. Here's the sort of breakdown of all of the different play styles that people might have and might bring to the group. Like, let's have a conversation. Didn't know if anyone would even like read it or respond to it, and then we had this whole conversation talking about, people would show up and say like, oh, like this one's me, like, oh, I'm this one, but with like hints of this one. And I think starting from that standpoint and having people come in recognizing, okay, like here is where we're all coming from and here are the things that we value, I think has made my players feel more respected and more valued, and also just been able to play together a little bit easier, because when somebody does something crazy, it's like, oh, but like that's because that's what this person really enjoys out of this, and like that, I don't have to be like confused or upset when someone didn't do like an optimal play, because that's not why they're here. That's not what they're getting out of this experience. And so being able to like have the language to talk about that goes a really, really long way, because then it's not that people are doing things that upset other people. It's just being able to have the tools to recognize that everyone has different priorities.
I'd imagine even within the four of us, we all fit different categories within that.
I differ on different days as well.
Yeah.
I'm definitely the friend. Just have a laugh.
Yeah, I'm often the friend. But if I draw a pit hag, I become Chaos main player.
I'm the guy that has no idea what he's doing. I'm just like, what even is this? How does the game even work? So I know you lot have a lot of questions you want to come out with. You're chomping at a bit, but bear with me. I have 2 more things to ask. We'll go to questions. We'll round it up, and it will be done. And I can send you back to the games you're running. So to start with, pardon the hiccups. When a community is already formed, jargon is formed there. We've got your 3x3s, you've got your like, oh, look at that seropunk, you've got your being mad about something. So how do you bring in a new player into this world of jargon who isn't either overwhelmed or just absolutely taken for a fool for basically the first 10 or 20 games before they can understand what's going on?
With great difficulty. It's impossible. You can't do it. It can't be done. No.
Everyone give up hope.
Please jump in with anyone who would better answer them.
For us, like, you just focus on TB. You have to do beginners.
It's just being aware that you're doing that and trying not to. Yeah.
I actually think this is a great opportunity for the storyteller, because if you look at the rules of the game, there are some things that would genuinely surprise you. Like red herring, not in the rules of the game anywhere. That is not actually in the text of the game at any point. But everyone, if you say red herring, and like this room right now, everyone's nodding, like, yeah, like the fortune teller has a good player that registers as evil. It doesn't say that in the rules. If you're a new player and you're reading the script and someone goes, oh yeah, the red herring, you're just like, what, where's fish? What? Like, doesn't register. And I think as the storyteller, being able to use the language in the rules of the game and on the character sheet goes an unbelievably long way in making new players feel included and feel like they understand what's being talked about and what's going on, and kind of pushing your players. And there's like some of this comes, like I used to be a teacher, and so some of this does come from like literal teaching children. But when a player said something like would say, oh yeah, like what's like hard claim, and then it's kind of like you can just be like, oh, what's a hard claim, and like make the player answer that. But just giving those little prompts to help your players who are really experienced and do have this kind of glossary of language that they use, and kind of helping them remember, oh wait, yeah, when I was new, I also didn't know what that meant, and this person has never played before, and so being able to, instead of just saying like, oh, 3 for 3 and just running on that, being able to say, oh yeah, do you want to like share some roles with me, and I can share some roles with you. We don't have to say exactly what we are, but we can say some things. One of the tools that I've actually designed as part of building out TPI's storyteller training program is a slang glossary for Clocktower, and so we've got this document that basically has a list of all of the terms that people use quite commonly that aren't in the rules of the game, and then it gives an example of kind of the terms that people use, and then also an example of how, as the storyteller, you can rephrase that language to help prompt a new player to say something that they'll understand.
And in the spirit of social deception, some of those terms will be made up by us.
Yeah. I think you have to be proactive, like when it's because we always save slots for new players in our games. It's kind of like our shtick. We've got 10 for regulars and like 35 for new players. You just have to like don't wait for them to approach you totally confuzzled and completely out of the game. Just approach them each day and like, did that all make sense?
Yeah.
Is this what people are telling you? This is what it means, and then they pick it up quite quickly.
I think it is priming your players. Sorry, I'm going to go
No,
real
go
quickly
ahead.
and then throw to Claire. It is, if you've got veterans, ideally, if you've got enough new players for one game, put them in the same game where you can. It almost doesn't matter what script they're playing, as long as everyone is about the same experience level, not skill level, experience level, then they'll have a good time. But if you're necessarily, often as you are, mixing new players with experienced players, it is just priming your experienced players. Sometimes it is just kind of before the game or during the game, if they're doing it, pulling them aside saying, hey, just please remember when you were a new player and take a step back from managing this game too hard. Please know, as James was saying, that they might not understand all the rules for this. And a bit of the secret sauce is when we have experienced players playing with newbies, the general direction is if you draw a good token, step off the gas a bit. Let the game come to them until the final day. Then on the final day, you can step in and do all the stuff. If you draw an evil token, play as hard as you can. But yeah, just priming your experienced players. And one thing that's always useful to remind them is that you were a new player once too, and that was really enjoyable. Talking 3 for 3s, we were developing the game. This is playing with our friends. It was years before someone, and this is Amy of Standard Amy Order, said, "I am either the Raven Keeper or the Undertaker." We're like, it's a revolution in strategy. Oh, no! She's potentially 2 roles at once. Oh my god! And it was like 2 years in before that happened. And so to expect a new player to come in now and someone's like, you want to go 3 for 3? It's like, what are you talking about? Like, it is being aware of that and priming your veteran players to also be aware of that. Yeah, sorry.
I was basically going to say more or less the same kind of thing. It's like one thing if we're at a convention like this and running games for all 9 or pretty much all 9 are brand new players. There isn't that barrier to the lingo at all. But when you're mixing new players in with veteran players, that's when you need to be clear about your expectations of the veteran players. Look, this is a newbie friendly or new player friendly TB. Please, as veterans, can you just be mindful? We're all new
Claire,
ones.
what's TB?
Oh, those are jobs.
I almost put you on that earlier as well. But yeah, there's, I think, a couple of things. One is, when I'm saying I'm the storyteller, feel free to ask me any questions. By the way, this player and this player, if I know them and I know they know the game like that, I'll say, these 2 guys have played a bunch as well. Feel free to approach them. They won't lie to you about game mechanics. They might lie to you about their role, but feel free to use them as a sounding board. And also setting the expectations of those veterans. And actually, while the bag's going round, please don't be sat there talking about your latest goblin win or what you did when you were a pit hag or what you did when you were a leech, because it will confuse the heck out of the brand new.
Because they don't know it's not relevant yet.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
last week
So
we
like,
had Atheist
keep
Heretic
the
game,
discussion
like,
to the roles that are on the sheet, like just for the new player game.
Yeah.
Once we've hooked them in, have at it. But until then,
huge. That's
just
huge.
rail
That's
back.
good.
I find it's trickiest with new players during nomination phases, the town square section, when really advanced veteran players will immediately, like, I'm nominating this is all going on, and the new players just kind of fall into the background. You need to kind of encourage them. Who would you like to nominate? What have you heard during the day? Because if not, they'll kind of get drowned out by all the veterans. That's an especially difficult phase that you've got to take care with.
I was gonna say sometimes in a big game, I'll actually prompt at the beginning of the game. I'll say, this is a really big game and we don't want it to last forever. So what I'm gonna do is during nominations, once you've made a nomination, the person who's been nominated will just get like a sentence to defend themselves, and then we'll just run the vote. So there is no accusation and defense is another one of those things that's developed as a meta that wasn't ever part of the game as it was conceived.
That can become a whole like TV show in its own right. People like a huge like monologue when they're defending themselves.
Yeah.
You have to basically play them off. You have to be like, okay, now sit down.
But it genuinely makes such a big difference, I've found, to just say, hey, actually what you're going to do is you're going to talk as a group, and then when somebody has somebody to nominate, they're just going to make that nomination, because it actually gives a lot of the newer players, I found, a lot of agency to be the one, because if they're all talking about it, then they all sort of share that information. It's a group conversation, and I've had that happen where, there's a new player who's quite quiet, wasn't totally sure, they're talking about it, and then she's the one who's like, I nominate this person, even though she didn't come to the start of the day with that, whereas I've often found when you do really lean heavily into the accusation and defense style of play, what ends up happening is the people who have the kind of mechanical solve are the ones who are going, well, like, I have this information, so I'm going to nominate this person because of this and this and this and this and this, and then the new players just sit there and they don't have that same thing to contribute. Whereas if you give them the reasons and make it more of a group activity, it just changes the way that they're being included.
We are getting off the original question, but I do like talking about this. Yeah, no, but it's we're getting into the spot of accusation defense, and that our theory, our most popular theory, is that developed because a lot of players came to Blood on the Clocktower through online play during COVID, and that really helps online because communication in groups is trickier. So giving someone space to speak when they accuse and space to speak when in their defense was natural for that. But it seems like a right thing to do is we run games now and people say, hey, whoa, a nomination happens and we go, hey, what do you have to say for yourself? A little bit, or run straight to a vote, and they're like, I didn't get my accusation in. It's like, okay, you don't get one. It seems like a fair way to do things, but when you're telling one person this is your time to speak, you're telling 9 other people you have to be quiet right now, and that's not what the game is. The game is you can say anything you want at any time, and it's less about giving the accuser time to speak and more about, as a storyteller, giving platform to quieter players or newer players, and giving, when they do have the space to speak, you can kind of go like, hey, this person hasn't said a lot yet, why don't we listen to what they have to say? And when being nominated is different from nominating, when you are nominated, you are the center of attention. I believe you should give them the final word, give them a bit of time to speak in their own defense. But encouraging your players out of accusation defense and into group discussion does take it away from the veteran solvers and give it back to the newer players a bit. Yeah.
I want to briefly continue that tangent, because I think from our perspective, like our group, because we're relatively new, a couple of years, I think a lot of that stems from No Rules Barred. People watch the way they do the live show, and that's the way they do it, and they assume this is the way to play it. Yeah. I know we did when we first started. So I think because so many people have come through that road.
But what's great for No Rules Barred is that, and if you get a chance to see Blood on the Clocktower live, it's a live stage show version of the game. It's adapted, hosted by John Gracie, and in Australia, Harry Jun ran a couple of shows. Check them out; they're great. But it's a different version of the game because it's acknowledging that it's a performance format, that it's for an audience. It's the same sort of game, but you're watching 6 comedians. Sorry, John. Sorry, and Harry. Having a laugh. The game is a format for them to do that, and with No Rules Barred, they are playing to be viewed, and so accusation and defense makes sense for those videos because you've got all these incredible charismatic performers, and here's a nice little vehicle for them to get up and give this little
the dramatic moment,
and in their own defense, and it's got the lighting. It's great for No Rules Barred, but you've got to look at the context of the way they're playing. They are playing for an audience, and they know they are, and it's for the audience more than the players. But when the game is just for the players, accusation defense doesn't really have as much of a place. You're right.
It does lengthen game time quite a bit as well. Especially with players that like to hear their own voice.
No, that was me waiting saying, oh, that's me.
Oh, I thought-
I love my
Oh,
voice.
right.
My voice is great.
Yeah, the next
you were
person
ready
to
for the
speak
next
after that was never going to have an easy time, yeah.
No, I got you. So, can you believe people thought I couldn't fill this whole hour with content?
Ben had his doubts, but yeah.
Yeah, that's how we roll, baby. Podcast extraordinaire. One more question before we go to the audience. What online resource people use, one, to help build a community, and also help build their games up to be better?
So what online resource that doesn't exist yet or does exist?
That does, and if it doesn't, why hasn't it?
Okay. Well, I'll speak to that second part first with the defense. We are planning something. Part of the biggest thing of building communities and finding games is finding where to play. And we are a slow-moving company of major goals and so forth. But one thing we eventually do want to do is just have an online aggregator of just looking up places to play in person. Playing online is easy because you get online and the app is there, or you join the Patreon Discord and you can find games that way, or just get into Discord. It's sort of more accessible. But finding games in person, if you're not, if you don't have the time or kind of capacity to start your own community, like we all have at some point or other, but you still want to play in person, we want to be able to provide a tool for you to just kind of search the planet for regular games that are running. So that is in the works. Conceptually. For the tools that do exist, outside of that, it's a kind of a boring answer, and I hope my co-panelists have better answers than me. It's social media. Eventbrite's great. Humanitix is great. Facebook events is great. Facebook is sort of slowly becoming more and more of a dumpster fire as time goes on. But the events function is still top-notch, and enough people are still on Facebook that you can kind of gather groups that way. Even putting the New South Wales Blood On The Clocktower games on Eventbrite, found quite a few people who would just see it come up in the search and be like, oh, I'll give this a go. It's easy to get to. So for the existing tools, the boring, easy social media event sites are great.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I learned really quickly is that everyone has their own preferred method of engaging online with social media or with just platforms to get information about events. And it's impossible to come up with something that works for everyone. Not everyone is going to be a big Discord person, the same way that not everyone's going to be a big Facebook person. Some people are on Meetup, some people aren't. There's not really one correct answer, and you kind of just have to pick the thing that works for the most people, and then try your best to encourage players to reach out to people who might want to come but aren't really big on that platform. For example, in California, we made a Discord server for the entire state of California, and then we've got different channels for the San Francisco Bay Area, for LA, for San Diego, for kind of Northern California. And that way people, if they were traveling within the state, could kind of do, figure out, I normally go to the games here, but I can now, see the games in LA and go there. And so it does help, I think, to have lots of different things, and it is a centralized place where everything is, but there are tons of people who just don't use Discord at all, who are I would never go on there to find out about a game. And so then there's also games that go up on Eventbrite and also games that go up on Facebook, and it is a bit tricky, I think, because you're never going to find one thing that works for everyone, but as much as you can. And because I think one of the things that we do benefit, because it's such a community-minded game, that when somebody does turn up because they've found out about it and they're a big Discord person, and then they've got a mate who shows up and they're because they said, you should come along, you're going to like this, even if they're not, going to find out about the games through the format that you're already using, just being able to loop them in and to have some sort of system where that someone is going to tell that guy to come back and when the next game is. And I think that's what matters, is making sure for people that, want to come, that they can access the information about being able to turn up.
Yeah, there's definitely work to be done there, I think. There's been so many players that have come to our game I love this game, and I had no idea there was a local group. It's very tricky to get word out. It's just advertising problem and trying to collate it all. I know there's some people within the UK groups that are making spreadsheets and trying to collate all the information on a monthly basis so that everyone can search locally where they're going to have a game or somewhere they can travel to. We'll probably just help facilitate that, and that will go a long way.
Be a central, at a certain point, when you are, we are the company producing a product, producing a board game, but by the nature of the board game, we're also evolving into being something else, which is more aware of its community and events and sort of thing than I think other game companies might. Where you can just kind of get a game out and engage with the community in so much as the necessary work of kind of marketing and promotions. but not to the extent that we've seen with Blood on the Clocktower. And I think there is an incumbent sort of responsibility on us, if we can manage it, which I hope we can, of being that central point where people look to us to tell them where the heck can you play this? Where can you find a group? Yeah.
Off you go.
I don't want to take the mic from people. I'm like, is it okay? All right, I think with us hitting the hour, almost there, I'd like to open this up for questions from the audience. Feel free to raise your hand up. Just a heads up, because it's being recorded, I will paraphrase what you said for recording purposes. I'm not trying to be like, let me see what you said, but better. I want to say it and for the audience put it up. So, any questions from the audience? I have one at the back. Hey, how you doing?
Sorry we were late, we were literally playing Clocktower.
That's a fine excuse.
So I remember when I was doing my first game, I was terrified about getting, especially the imp, but really any evil character, and doing it badly and ruining the game for everyone else. I don't know, I think maybe this is a common thing, I don't know, but how do you address that fear, and maybe, would you ever, I don't think, you couldn't make it so that new players aren't the bad guys, but how else could you think of addressing that fear?
Hold up, before you say it, I have a job, all right? I don't care if you wrote the game, you're going to wait for me.
I didn't write the game.
Just about how do you deal with new player evil part fear?
I think here's how I do it, is there's a reason that Trouble Brewing is referred to as the beginner script. And one of those reasons is that it's very difficult in TB to be solely responsible for losing the game for your team. And that's a design function, and it was designed with that in mind, with introducing new players into a game and assuaging that fear of lying. Stephen was very well aware one of those big fears is I just don't want to say the wrong thing and screw it up for my team. So Trouble Brewing has so many safeguards specifically to prevent that. And you can tell players this. Like, if they're like, I'm really worried about being evil, it's like, actually, it's kind of hard to screw it up. If they're a minion, your job is to die. Like, that's good when that happens. Don't worry, embrace it, embrace death. If you're the demon, you've got bluffs. You kind of take them through, like, yeah, like, you might not get to the end of the game, but here's how your characters work. And the best thing is when players approach you, because then you can prepare them for this. Probably the hardest thing is when they get a bluff and they screw it up and then they're really out of themselves. But they get bluffs, you can remind them, look, if you're feeling the heat too much, you can target yourself, pass to a new player. If you're a minion and you screw up, that's fine. Just double claim someone else and death grip them until the end of the game, you know. It's just letting them know that it's in the design of the game that it's very hard to lose the game by yourself in Trouble Brewing. For Bad Moon Rising, Sex and Violence, what we call intermediate, that's certain times that's less so. But the Klutz can lose the game for their team in a certain way, in a way that the Saint can't. Everyone has to agree to execute the Saint, and one time out of 100 you get a player who is the Saint and just never says anything. So I'm getting quite detailed in the answers. So yes, sometimes, but blah. And then with the expansions, what you get up to beginner, intermediate, expert is people far enough into Blood on the Clocktower that everyone understands that the whole game could live and die on their own choices, and there are characters that incentivize those big, risky game-ending plays and stuff. But that is all kept away from the beginner players completely. Yeah, sorry. Does anyone else want to speak to that?
I think that was spot on.
Yeah. The only thing I'd add is that as the storyteller and the people who regularly attend those games, like, y'all have the power to establish the attitude about winning. Let's call it that. And I think that's a huge thing. Like, yesterday, one of my favorite games that I ran was actually one of the just new player games down at the stand, where the woman who drew the Saint token, she sort of was like, so if I get executed, the game ends. And I was kind of like, you know, she's talking to me directly, so I was like, yes, like that's your power, is that you're the Saint. If they kill you, the game will be over. And she was like, and then we'll just play another one. And I was like, yes, like that, because that's actually the thing that matters. Is like, it's not like, oh my God, like I will lose the game and it's the end of the world. She was just very much like, oh, we'll play another game.
It's like day one Slayer kill, re-rack.
Yeah, and I think setting that norm and building that environment where it's like, oh, like if the game ends, like great, now we have something fun to talk about, and we get to play another game. And focusing the emphasis on that instead of on, oh, if I get killed as the game ends, and I will have done like this egregious error, and I lost the game for my whole team, and it's all my fault. Now I have to go sit in the corner in shame. It's like, no, that's not what you're doing. And I think we were talking about this the other day, that Clocktower, as much as it is a game that has a winner and a loser at the end, like it wasn't really designed to be a game that you go and you play so that you win the game. Like for me, at least, winning the game is like I had fun and everyone else had fun.
Yeah.
It's like the actual outcome of the game is somewhat secondary for me as a player, and that's not the case for every player, and that's also okay. Like it's great to turn up, and there is also an aspect of like, well, if you're actively not trying to win, that is a separate problem that also needs to be dealt with.
Yes.
But yeah, I think it's really empowering to actually be a veteran player and be a storyteller, because you are in the position of setting the norm of like what it means to win at the game. And if you build an environment where you're like, especially if you see that you have those new players who are nervous about it because they're like, what if I do the wrong thing? And you're like, no, the only wrong thing you could do is to not have fun. It makes a huge difference.
Yeah, like focus on the moments, like those silly, fun moments that everyone remembers the next month when you come back. For anyone that's anxious about not playing something right, be like, well, that was a laugh. No one expected it. Like we had just this last month, someone, without getting really complicated, I know a lot of you played it, but we had an evil atheist get created in a custom script, and it was a total mess. And the person who turned into the evil atheist thought, I'm going to win the game for my team now. I'm this, and like, no, that loses it for your new team. But we make a silly little article about it in a little newspaper next month, and it just becomes a moment, a little joke. And if you don't take it too seriously, then it alleviates that pressure a little bit, I think, across the board. Because I get anxious when I peel a demon. I'm rubbish demon. Even though I dress up as one, like I get flustered. I get flustered. Being a minion is great fun.
Maybe that's why they know.
But yeah, I am killed. I'm killed like that. I am just killed. Like if they see me like twitching or doing something, like kill him. Just get rid of him. But like, and I understand that anxiety, but I think that focusing on the fun element of it and not taking it too seriously and enjoying the little conversations moment to moment. And if it goes wrong, well, it's a new game. It's fine.
I also think, I know Evan mentioned this briefly, but genuinely beyond just sort of the design of the game more broadly, that's actually where travelers come from. I know we talk about them a lot to say, oh yeah, travelers exist because if somebody turns up late or they have to leave early, you can still include them in the game. But the real intentionality behind travelers beyond that, and kind of the main function for them, was if you have a player who turns up and they're so anxious and nervous and panicked about being an evil player, or specifically being the demon and having that responsibility, just make them a traveler. They are guaranteed not the demon, and everyone knows it. And that was such an intentional design choice by Steven to put that in the game, to say if there's somebody who's really has that level of anxiety and fear that they're going to mess up the game for their team in some way, make them a traveler. They literally cannot mess up the game for their team in that way.
I think that's a great idea, yeah.
I feel like
As an anxious evil player, I love being the gunslinger. The gunslinger's so much fun. You just sit there like that in the town square, like, who's dying today?
Travelers do a lot of load bearing in game. I think they're kind of like silent heroes in a lot of ways. And not just while we're talking about travelers, another tidbit. Travelers are a way of expressing all the fun, creative character ideas Stephen was having that wouldn't work as other characters, because every good character needs to be bluffable by the evil team in some way, and most travelers just aren't. Like, you're giving someone 3 votes, you can't do it. So travelers were a way of going, here's this really fun ability. How do we get this in the game still? So travelers they do so much. Yeah.
Awesome.
All right, thank you very much. Any other questions from the audience? Hey, what's up?
Paradox.
So the TPI and Clocktower has a strong online fan base, known as the unofficial Discord, and many more niche ones as the California one. How has TPI's relationship grown with that over time? And then more importantly, how are they approaching trying to bridge the online Discord and all the updates they receive and all the information they receive with people who are not connected online? I know Stephen had a 2-month Instagram thing where he updated on ideas, which should return. It's fun to wake up to. But yeah,
I liked every post.
The Discord and unofficial with those who are not necessarily online and tech savvy.
And to paraphrase for everyone else, I hope I don't mess up your words. online discords, many communities, how can you connect to them, especially from the TPI Discord, where a lot of updates come and they don't get it directly? What things are you doing to bridge those two together? Is that fair?
Oh yeah. Anyone wants to jump in? Yeah, please do.
Jams.
Jams, yeah!
Just like the reason I'm not good at answering this, I'm not a very online person. The least online person on the team is Stephen, and then I'm probably a close second after that. So yeah.
Yeah, this is the short answer is slowly. We are doing this very slowly, and I think part of it is that this is an area of company growth and game design growth where we sort of are realizing things are happening as they're happening, in large part because people in our community bring them to our attention. For example, to get a bit niche, but it'll zoom back out, I promise. The other day, I think it was in one of the more recent character release streams, we were talking about the Sage and the Recluse, which are two characters from our base scripts. The Sage is if you kill this player in the night, if the demon kills them, they learn 2 players, and one of those players is the demon that killed them. That's what it says in the almanac entry for the Sage. And then the Recluse is a character where if they exist, and then passively they might register to other players' abilities as evil or as a demon or minion. In the Sage almanac, again, it specifically says that the Sage should not. They have to learn the demon who killed them. And that's because in Sex and Violets, the home script for the Sage, there are a lot of ways for there to be more than one demon in play at the same time. Now, a lot of those demons might be dead, but if the Sage ability were to just say, they learn the demon, then you could show them any demon. You might show them a good demon, you might show them a dead demon, you didn't have to show them the alive demon, and so that's why the Sage entry says you have to learn the demon that killed you, so that the Sage still gets useful information in S&V. That's the intention behind it, but rules as written, what it says is they must learn the demon that killed them. The Recluse, because they are a good outsider, obviously can never kill the demon, barring some other weird things that may or may not be in the future. And so, rules as written, you could never show the Sage the Recluse, but rules as intended, that should be how it works. And I was talking to Stephen about this the other day, and I was sort of like, the rules, as they're written, you can't. And he was like, that's crazy. You should be able to show the Recluse to the Sage. And there's tons of little things like that in the rules that we're realizing as we go, wait a second, when these characters just existed in the confines of their base scripts, which is how they existed when we wrote those almanacs and when we released them, these rules worked, and they did all the things that we wanted them to do. And now with the advent of custom scripts and with the ongoing release of all of these different experimental characters, there are tons of interactions that we know on the internal end how they're intended to work, but the rules as they are written don't necessarily work that way. And so what that leads us with is these situations where people all of a sudden have question after question after question about how the game works and what do you do if this happens or if this happens. I get probably one message a day personally, and then more just through our social media accounts of people saying, how does this work? Just rules questions. I know, Claire, you get a ton in the inbox as well. Regularly.
Don't envy that at all. I just draw things.
And it's fun on one hand, but on the other hand, I'm like, how it works is there are some rules of the game that we all agree are how the game works, and that if you were to run it differently, there would be major problems for your group. But there's quite a lot of rules, especially when you get into niche interactions where there's 3 characters. Stephen has a rule where he's like, we will never release a jinx that is 3 ways, because we are only focused on fixing interactions that are broken between 2 characters. If there's something that breaks between 3 characters, if we were to actually do that, we would literally die before it happened because it would take that long. And so I think what's really tough is that we have to kind of address these things, both as they come up, but also, more importantly, give storytellers the agency to just make calls in the moment and to make sure that your players understand how things function in your game, which is, at the end of the day, slightly more important. But that doesn't really solve the problem of what's happening where, we have a idea for how something should work. How do we communicate that to everyone in a way where it actually gets across and where as many people as possible understand the intention behind how something should work and how it can, manifest in a game. So this is why the answer is slowly, because this is a very, very long ongoing project where essentially I personally have to go into like almanacs and go into every character. I have literally a Google spreadsheet of every single character, and now whenever we release a new character, I literally go one by one, and I'm like, how does this work with this next character? And then I write little notes if there's like something interesting or something novel or something that actually needs to be fixed and is broken. And sometimes the notes, like there is the character we're releasing next month, I literally wrote a note next to Snake Charmer for how it works with this character that just said, very stupid, period. That's the whole just, is it broken? No, it's just stupid.
Yeah.
And so it's like you have,
Sorry.
Oh yeah, 'cause, so, but like I have to do this for, and it's like, it took me probably, because I did this actually on the plane over, it took a couple of, I think like 3 hours to kind of go through and to be like, I'm happy with how this list looks. That was for one character. There are like 300-ish characters that I need to do that for, and I need to do it for every character with every other character. So it takes a long time, and it is very slow, but it is something that also now, like, I have more time to do. So eventually down the line, like, one of the things, I actually recently played my first ever game of D&D proper. I played some role-playing games before with Claire.
Yes.
And it was really fun.
It was great.
And in the middle of the game, I don't know if you recognize that this happened, there was some sort of, like, rules thing that happened, and I have crazy bad ADHD, so I was just kind of, like, vibing, and, like, I don't know, I got to, like, throw things and kill things, and just like mess around.
But what was happening in the game, James?
I have no idea. Genuinely no idea, and that's on brand. But Claire at one point, like, something happened, and the DM was kind of like, oh, like, how does this work? And Claire and our other friend Daniel were talking about it, and then Claire, like, got up and got a book off the shelf, and they, like, looked up, like, how the thing worked, and I was like, we need that. Like,
yes.
And so, because that's been on my list for ages, is to actually have some sort of, whether it's a book or an app or a website, but something where, like, the way that you go and you're like, oh, I need to book a train from this place to this place, so I'm going to put in this place, and I'm going to put in the other place that I have to go, and I'm putting the time that I need to leave. Like, imagine something like that, where it's an app, and you could literally put in, like, Snake Charmer, Recluse, and then you just get a little blurb that's like, this is how the Snake Charmer works with the Recluse. Like, it would be so easy. And so, but it takes a long time to actually build things like that, and that's literally been on my, like, to-do list for 2 years, where, like, Patters and I worked on kind of a prototype for it, like, a year ago, and it's just sort of existed as a little prototype for a while. So eventually, that's something we'd love to get to, but in the meantime, it's very much like we're cobbling things together. And for those of you that were around for the most recent character release, when we released the Lord of Typhon, I know I talked about this on the stream when we released it, but quite literally, I was talking to Steven, and I was like, Steve, what are we going to do about the Recluse and the Spy? Because, like, here's my feedback from having tested them and from having run them, here's, like, what we learned, and he was like, no, they don't misregister. Misregistration doesn't start until after setup, and I was like, Steve, that's literally not how it works. Like, here's what it says in the rules, here's what Ed wrote 3 years ago about the Marionette and the Recluse. Like, this is actually a problem, and here are all the consequences for it. For example, if you say abilities don't start until after, and now we're getting really nerdy, so I'm going to bring it back. Basically, every single time we add something to the game, but also not just add, when we look back on the way that things worked when they were released in the confines of their base scripts and the way that they work with all of the things that they now can be played with just because of how custom scripts work, there's just so many different ways that things come together and work together that we actually do kind of need to go back and really start from the beginning and go, how does everything work with everything else? Like, what is consistent, what is not? And one of the benefits, at least, of having experimental characters is that they are experimental, they are not final, and they can change. And you've seen that with some of the more recent updates that we're doing. A big part of why Steven's ongoing updates have kind of died out a bit is just because he's got some other projects that have come up, and so the two of, and I've been traveling a lot, so we haven't been meeting as regularly to actually flesh out those updates. There's some really, really cool ones coming. Like a couple of characters that have been sort of known to the community as relatively broken, where I just went and, like, tested the hell out of them and then found the fixes that we were like, these are amazing, like, this is the one, this is the thing that works, and this is going to be so much better.
Yeah, the goal was to eliminate all jinxes that said they can't both be in play, and that's just good, better game design. And there's always a solution, and you folks are finding them. It's cool to see. Yeah. Sorry.
So the less short but conclusive answer is it's really, really tough. There's not a good way to handle it, but we're aware of it and we're working on it, which isn't satisfying, but that's what's true. So.
And just to sort of, some of the game design, so the tweets and so on that went out, that's Stephen clarifying things and just sort of seeing what works, seeing what doesn't work a little bit. But I've had questions on the inbox like, well, does that mean we're supposed to run it this way now? Can we carry on running it that way? Like, as long as you're consistent and as long as your players know how you're running something, you can run New Balloonist or Old Balloonist. It's fine. We will be making, New Balloonist is how it's going to be as and when we eventually release the tokens and expansions or whatever. That's how it will be.
Active Baron.
No active Baron.
I heard there's demand for
But
it.
if you have a script that was written a while back and it relies on Old Balloonist and you want to run that script and you want to run it that way, as long as your players know that's what you're doing, have at it, and so it's less of a, it's not that it's not important to get it out into sort of the non-online, the real world space, but there is already a functioning character and a way to run everything at the moment. If you want to run the new way, great. If you don't, great.
Remember that, Josh, when you're doing custom scripts? Do whatever you want. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, what are the rules of a game? But really, no. Of trusting the people making the game that this is more fun than not doing it. When you sit down and play Ticket to Ride, you are trusting that someone figured out that drawing cards and playing trains in this way is pretty enjoyable. And if you follow the rules, then you will have the same fun that they intended. And so the kind of ongoing project, us being able to sit here and say, you've bought into this product, you like this game, and us saying, here are the rules, if you trust us, and you should, we hope, we think this is a fun and good way to do this, and we can usually justify those reasons. And it also serves as a baseline for kind of, I think, if you're going to play it as like homebrew or modder thing, generally it's like, if everyone agrees to, but if not everyone agrees to, then I think it should default to kind of publish the rules. But that option is there, and Stephen himself would say, if there's, I think in the rule books, if there's an interaction that really just isn't clear to you, storyteller makes the call and communicates it to the players.
Yeah, it specifically says in the rule book, if the rule book doesn't say you can't do it, you can do it.
Yeah.
Verbatim.
I have to check. Sorry. Do we have any other questions coming up? Oh, we've got 10 minutes to go. I don't know how many more. I think it might be the last one, unless someone comes out of it. So we're going to take us on with it. What would you like to say?
Yeah, just really quickly, you did mention the future tokens when they do get released. Over time, my players have really got bitten by the Clocktower bug. They started seeking online content, watching and absorbing as much as they can. They started coming in as like, oh, I'd love to try the catfishing script, and they start mentioning experimental characters. And knowing some of the players for as long as I have the fear of, if I attempt to make a custom token, they might start meta and, I can feel these tokens are a little bit different. What would you guys do to kind of bring these experimental characters in at the moment when these real tokens don't exist? Not saying I don't want to give these guys money, I do. But
No. Well,
We don't like money.
I have one job.
Sorry.
Just to paraphrase, how do you implement newer experimental tokens into an already established game without the players feeling or understanding that there might be fakes in the board that they can feel?
I'll handle that one. Why am I doing that? This is a gap between online play and offline play, the conveniences of online, you can release a character, it's there instantly. And so we've known for a while that there is this disparity. Of course, we may shock you to learn we don't have a definitive timeline on the expansions, and we're aware of that. But we do, without getting into too much detail, we want to have more about this maybe later in the year. But we do have meaningful progress has been made towards fixing that gap up. So I don't have an answer now, which is like generally if you're substituting tokens. Like, hey, if you draw this character, it means you're this character. In-person storytelling can hold up to one, maybe two of those. After that, it's just impossible. Yeah. So we're aware this is a problem. We hear you. We have meaningful plans in place, but I don't want to go into more detail than that now because not until it's fully confirmed.
Is we put all our tokens, official ones and any customs, in coin cases, so that they all feel the same in a bag.
That's fun.
Can do that. Yeah.
It's a good idea.
It sort of breaks after about 12 players because the coin cases don't quite fit in the bag. But I've seen people doing that, and you can
That's
sort of
cool. I like
felt
that.
back the coin cases as well.
Yeah.
One thing I've done as well is like you say, for 1 or 2, you can make substitutions.
Just proxy them.
Like there are 1 or 2 blanks that come with the game, and I've just written a 1 and a 2 on in Sharpie, so that you can use them as anything, and then like a whiteboard, like 1 equals this, 2 equals this. Enjoy. But beyond maybe 3 substitutions, that gets a bit unwieldy. Anyway,
I was going to say this is a bit of an unconventional one, but back when I first was running in-person playtest games, I didn't have any of the tokens, and all I had was online stuff, and so I would quite literally bring my computer, and my friend would bring a Grim, and I would have the whole setup on the computer, because there's a local play option actually on the online app. And so I could set it up, and then what I would do is I'd have the scripts printed for everyone, put them to sleep, and then I just wake everyone up one at a time and just point to what they were on the sheet. So that's how everyone learned what they were, and then I could just run it off of a computer. Very imperfect, but like if you really are struggling for ideas and you can't get coin cases, it's a way to do it that works, and then you can play with any characters because you're using on the storyteller end, you've just got the Grim on your computer still.
So TBA, the experimentals are coming soon.
They are.
Yes,
They are
Also,
coming.
just buy the expansions, bro. What's up with you? Right? Just buy it. Just buy it,
Not
right?
available yet.
Just buy it. What?
Is
Is it not out yet? Just buy it.
microphones.
Just buy it.
Without saying too
Yagababble
much,
token when?
we will say that there is a plan in place for this, and we should have
Yeah,
information about that coming
meaningful
soon.
progress has been
Yes.
made. I just don't want to do a timeline yet because timelines are absolutely terrifying
But
to even publicly hint
The
at.
big
Yeah.
difference, and the thing that I think
Yeah.
is fair to say, is that before it was very much this idea of like, oh, wouldn't it be cool to do this? And we all agreed that it would be cool to do that, but didn't actually have a plan for what that would look like. And now it's like we know exactly like, okay, this happens first, then this happens, then this happens, then they are available for sale. The timeline for all of that is much less clear because it depends on a lot of factors that are in flux.
Yeah.
But
We
knowing,
have
like,
some
yeah.
good ideas, just not anything that we should say right now. But yeah.
But knowing that plan exists, I think, helps quite a lot.
Yes.
It's like we can see how we get to the light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah.
Do we have any other questions? Question time in 3.
Closing the day. Closing the day.
Good enough for you in the questions. Thank you very much, everyone, for coming. Thank you very much for our panelists for being here, and thank everyone for coming to this lovely, lovely show. And thank you for Tabletop Scotland. Go enjoy the rest of your day. You can have your 5 minutes back, I guess, and see y'all later.
We'll see some of you for games tomorrow.
Thank you so much for coming.
That was great.
I need to push the stop recording button. I don't. I
I
hope
think that's why Ben's like, Evan, you can step in. I'm sweating.
Should I press?
Listen, let me take responsibility. Okay, here we go. 3, 2, 1, stop.
So is that going on the website then? Is it?
Yes, it is. I hope.